Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the DD Geopolitics live stream. I am your host, Sarah, and I am streaming from NATO Stan this time. Pepe is not streaming from NATO Stan, but no introduction needed to my guardian angel and rock and roll star of politics, Pepe Escobar. How are you today?
How are you, Angel? And Sarah, you're the real angel. You're not the angel that was re-recorded by that asshole Rod Stewart, by the way.
If you want my body. Yeah.
If you want my body, nobody wants your body, asshole.
So where do you even start? We'll start with the comment. Well, maybe it isn't a comedy, but Putin's peace offering to Zelensky on the eve of the peace summit. How do you feel about the message Putin is sending with his peace offering of we're going to take Kharkiv, Donetsk, Lugansk, and Zaporozhye, and no NATO, same other neutrality and demilitarization. How do you feel? What were your thoughts on it?
Well, Sarah and all of you watching, this is a very, very complex issue here. There is a raging debate in the corridors of power, diplomats, businessmen, especially. A lot of people didn't like this peace offer at all, at all. For several reasons. Well, my column, I wrote a column about it, but I think it will only be out this Tuesday. The critics argue that Putin was too generous. And yes, the offer is extremely generous. The offer basically is 2.0 Istanbul in 2022 with minor modifications. Don't forget that this is what was accepted by Ukraine at the time. And then the next day, Boris Johnson, under the orders, of course, of his paymasters, destroyed it completely. They say that Putin basically is offering NATO just the possibility of not being present physically in Kiev, but the Ukraine, what was rump Ukraine, or what's left of Ukraine, will be entitled to have an army. We all know what kind of army would that be, right? And some of them are comparing, I would say, relatively correctly with the peace that prevailed in Syria, which was brokered by the Russians, by the way. We all know what happened with Idlib after this Russian brokered peace. Idlib is a nest of extremists from all over the place. So there's no peace in Idlib. 6 years later, it's very dangerous for the Syrian Arab army and for Russian peacekeeping soldiers, let's put it this way. So it's a very good debate, in fact. But what I think that the critics don't see is how Putin is playing the long game. Of course, this was a decision that was matured between Putin and the Security Council. They thought about that for weeks, obviously. They knew the dates, they knew about the Swiss kabuki, and they came up with something preemptive the day before. And that was already a fabulous diplomatic coup, because who won the Swiss kabuki without even showing up? Vladimir Putin, because people were absolutely forced to discuss the offer. And of course, very, very important, 5 BRICS nations were represented in Switzerland, not at the highest level. They abstained from signing the final statement, which is something absolutely vacuous anyway. 5 BRICS, very, very important. Everybody with the brain knows that without the BRICS, you cannot do anything nowadays in the global chessboard. So that makes it 2 victories in a row for the Russians. The criticism about the offer being too generous, the fact that he basically he lets NATO get away with it more or less without utter humiliation. I would say this it has a degree of truth in all that. But at the same time, the Russians know very well, and just look at what Medvedev unplugged has been saying on X practically on an everyday basis. They know that the offer would be rejected, as it was on the same day by that epileptic slab of Norwegian wood passing as NATO Secretary General. It was rejected by the sweaty sweatshirt as well, illegitimate, by the way. And the Russians are saying openly, look, if there is anybody to negotiate in Kiev, it's not the gangster, it's the Verkhovna Rada. So, and this is a legitimate power, and this is recognized by the Kremlin as a legitimate interlocutor in any negotiation. And the fact that the Chinese didn't even bother to send anybody, very, very important. This is the Russia-China strategic partnership. The fact that the Russians know that at the G7, they already knew that even before, that the G7 would approve that absolutely extraordinary mafioso scam of scheming interest on the frozen, meaning stolen Russian assets of roughly $260 billion, $270 billion, most of that in Europe, to pay for the so-called $50 billion loan to Ukraine. But the story of this loan is absolutely fantastic, Sarah and all of you. I don't know if this is being reported in the US.
No.
I haven't had to read the American press.
What they did in the press, what they did over here is they gave them the interest, and then they quickly started talking about our new military budget. So that story kind of got buried.
Okay, but I'm not sure, Sarah, if anybody explained how the loan is going to work. Okay, so I can give you the ultra short version to all of you. The Europeans are going to do the heavy lifting. They are going to transfer, in fact, the whole of the 280, 270, 280 to the US. Not only the income on the total as collateral, because if you have 1.5 billion a year or so, this could never be collateral enough to secure a loan. What is collateral enough to secure a loan is the total confiscated amount, which is 280 something billion, right? And any legal problems that will arise after that, it will be on the Europeans, not the Americans. The Americans are clever enough not to give a loan to a country whose the debt rating of Ukraine is 6 feet under at least, you know. So obviously you don't loan, you don't make a loan to a real country 404, which is the case. So the onus will be on the Europeans. And of course, the loss of credibility on a global level with a global majority will be the Europeans. And the craziest thing is most of these funds are in Europe under the jurisdiction of Belgium, in fact. Belgium is not even a member of the G7. And the EU is not responsible for this whole operation. Guess who is responsible for this transfer? The G7, which has no authority, no jurisdiction whatsoever. This means that the Americans imposed this decision on the G7, and the G7 imposed this decision on the Eurocrats and Belgium. So it's in terms of a machination, a gangster mafioso machination is a thing of beauty, because the only ones who will get away with it, once again, will be the Americans, and all the problems will fall on the Europeans, including the fact that the whole global majority is going to look at it, forget about bye-bye euro, and bye-bye placing funds, investments, etc., in the European Union. Forget it. So the Russians knew that even before. So they know this is not going to change. And at the same time, they were analyzing the so-called green light, which was given months ago, by the way, but only now has been made public, for attacks with long-range missiles inside the Russian Federation. So they look at the chessboard, they see all that, they say, okay, we make a very generous peace offer, knowing that will be rejected. And then, which is exactly what Nebenzia at the UN, Narishkin, SVR, head of the Duma, they are all saying the same thing. Look, this is the last offer. This is the last chance saloon. If you don't take it, the next offer won't be an offer. The next offer will be unconditional surrender. And obviously, nobody from the Beltway to Brussels, they still don't get it. So we are all wondering here, what will it take for them to get the message? That's where we are at the moment.
So then we have this kind of signature angry letter that comes out of the peace summit, and then nobody in BRICS signs it.
Yes.
And then even afterwards, what do you think about Iraq? And I believe Jordan was the other one, but Iraq pulls its signature off of it after that. What was it about? Well, first let's see some clips.
In fact, they didn't even sign, Sarah. The real story is not that they pulled it off. They had not agreed to sign in the first place, but the signatures were there. And then the Swiss had to take it off because, can you imagine an Iraqi diplomat calls the Swiss and says, look, we didn't sign anything. And the guys are very embarrassed. That's what happened.
Well, let's take a look at the female Zelensky, soon to be female Zelensky.
Ukraine's peace is Moldova's peace. Slava Ukraini.
Well, yeah, she is Zelensky 2.0 with a skirt.
Exactly. What do you think about Moldova and Romania and kind of that situation there with Transnistria and Gagauzia? We talked a little bit about it last time. You and I were very enthusiastic about Gagauzia. I think there's been a meeting in Russia recently, and then an issue again when they returned back from Moscow. But what do you think about the situation developing Moldova, Transnistria, Romania?
This is part of the criticism of the peace offer, in fact, because the peace offer does not solve two serious problems. One, what's going to happen to the Black Sea in practice? So if you leave rump Ukraine will have access to the Black Sea. This means NATO will continue to have access in the Black Sea in Ukrainian territory. And Transnistria as well. Nothing. And very, very important. Okay, we can turn this around, which is what I tried to do when I was writing. I was reading the whole thing again, and I noticed that Putin didn't say even one word about Odessa, which here is the holy grail. For everyone supporting the SMO from the beginning, Odessa is the holy grail. We can't, of course, at the moment, we can only speculate because, we don't have access to decisions of the Security Council. None of us, including very well-placed diplomatic and Russian diplomats and analysts. He did that on purpose because it's implied that if they don't take the offer, which they won't, the whole thing goes all the way to Odessa. And obviously, by extension, Transnistria. So there are ways of looking at the 5D, 10D, 15D chess that is being played at the moment. It's quite plausible. At the same time, we should be wary of all those issues that are not solved if you read the proposal. The proposal, in fact, is quite vague. It's not specific. The specificity will be decided at negotiating table. Let's say this is an initial offer, but it is too generous. And even people who defend Putin here, they say it's too generous. Businessmen, they absolutely hate it because now, contrary to, I would say, 2-3 months ago, okay, since the Crocus terror attack, now there is a consensus that what is needed is a decapitation strike. obviously, considering that Putin is extremely legalistic and very cautious, we don't think this is going to happen. Only, okay, we don't know the next 3 months, what I defined as the summer of living dangerously. This is what's right in front of us. It's going to be extremely dangerous these next 3 to 4 months.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that, because I'm not going to play the clip because it's too long. But
Okay.
one of our guests or one of our listeners asked, and I was going to ask anyway, so I'll put it up. Do you think President, I'm sure he meant Vucic, is right
Yes.
that Macron rather tries to limit NATO's defeat on Ukrainian ground rather than European cities? But I also want to highlight what he recently said in his statement. I believe it was yesterday or the day before. He said the war in Europe will start in 3 to 4 months, probably even sooner. The USA wants to dissolve Russia and sacrifice Europe for it. He even stated that 15 million people would, up to 15 million people would be dead. This is quite a statement coming from a president in the Balkans, especially given what's happening at the borders of Serbia and Kosovo, and that's heating up. What do you think about Vucic?
And Vucic is very well informed, Sarah. He doesn't say these things lightly. As much as Viktor Orban is, Viktor Orban was the first one from the EU who said that, look, they are building bases in Poland, Romania, and Slovakia to transfer weapons to Ukraine. So these two different registers, they measure their words very carefully. So Serbian intelligence is very competent. So they know they have their moles inside NATO as well. And the Serbian diaspora, wow. And these are people ultra high caliber.
Yeah, they are.
So they are ultra high caliber. I'm always impressed by them.
Yeah.
And they usually get the information, undiluted from the sources. So I was thinking about summer of living dangerously, taking this into consideration. Absolutely, these two vectors, and the fact that it's going to be escalation central starting next week or in the next 2 weeks. No question about that. And a window, let's say a window of opportunity for a possible false flag, which would be from early August to mid-August to maximum early September, because after that will be too close to the American elections.
Yeah.
So everybody's factoring the possibility of a false flag, of course, to be blamed on Russia at the height of summer, right? And I'm sure Orban and Vucic, of course, they have this information, obviously, and from inside NATO. And the fact that the Norwegian Wood he's behaving more and more like he's trying to sing the devil version of Satisfaction. Remember that in the 80s? He's like this all the time. He barely controls himself, and with the rictus, of course, like a robotic rictus like this. And I have to tell you guys what I just saw before talking to you, which is I would put it in the Freud-Lacan section, this one. Do you know what he said a few minutes ago, in fact? He referred to the Ukrainian Air Force as NATO Air Forces. Talk about Freudian sleep. His words, NATO Air Forces. And he said that NATO pilots would be flying F-16s. Can you imagine? He said that in a row, and obviously after that, he said, oh shit, I fucked up. And then he corrected himself, but it was too late. The Freudian slip is already out. Everybody knows this, that NATO pilots will be flying the F-16s because the Ukrainians simply cannot learn to fly an F-16 in a matter of months. Out of the question. And everybody knows that these are the NATO Air Forces, starting with Putin and the Security Council. So they are already anticipating that this is going to happen. They are ready. They have all the scenarios, all the way to I would not say tactical nuclear weapons, because they don't need it. And Putin once again said, look, we don't need nuclear weapons. We can win this thing on the ground like we are doing it with the characteristic Russian strategy of crawling and meat grinder and then that apocalyptic artillery barrage. They don't need nuclear weapons, of course, especially now that the front is disintegrating and the Ukrainian army in all points is also disintegrating. But and that's what makes the current juncture so dangerous. And here, people, the consensus here, people understand that this is so dangerous, and the only solution the only, let's say, palliative to try to go around the situation would be a decapitation strike. But a decapitation strike now doesn't make any sense, because that thing in power in Kiev is already self-decapitated. He's totally illegitimate from the point of view of the Ukrainian constitution, any legal point of view. So the Verkhovna Rada could be convinced via underground lateral sources to start studying the proposal. And apparently, according to the Duma people here, from yesterday to today, they said, look, some of them are already studying our proposal. So this could be one possibility. Can you imagine the Verkhovna Rada say, okay, bring a Kremlin emissary here to Kiev. Let's discuss it face to face, or vice versa. This will change the game. Obviously, it's not going to happen because the hegemon will never allow it. Just like they will never allow any possibility of, let's say, a driveway towards a peace negotiation. That kabuki in Switzerland was just that, a kabuki. Even some Europeans said, look, it's absolutely pointless to have this thing here if Russia is not on the table. And then the Swiss start saying, look, maybe we're going to have another one before the end of the year, and then we're going to invite the Russians. So you know, the degree of cognitive dissonance from the part of Europe is beyond mind-boggling. And now, after the results of the European elections, even worse. Yesterday, they were telling me that the situation in Paris nowadays is beyond chaotic.
Yes.
So the whole French system is falling apart. The whole thing, you know, and voters don't believe either in the extreme right center coalition or the left socialist progressive coalition. They don't believe in anybody. In fact, they would like to vote all the rascals out at the same time, which unfortunately they cannot do. So the whole thing is falling apart inside the major capitals in Europe and inside NATO as well, because we see people like Orban saying openly, look, we're not going to be part of this, your escalation. Your escalation is on you. We have not been consulted, and if it depends on us, we're not going to do anything about it. And there are 3 or 4, at least, who are completely divided. And in the case of Italy, for instance, it's even worse.
Yes.
Because Italian public opinion is completely against it. Giorgia Meloni has been forced to be pro-escalation, in fact. But Georgia, I'm sorry, she has a new hairdresser. She does
look great. She looks great. And she's stuck in a diet, stuck in
dressing Armani. She looks fantastic, by the way.
She looks great.
The problem is the upgrade didn't go here. Huh?
No.
The brain was not touched by the upgrade. There's no Louis Vuitton for brain or Armani for brain, you know, in her case. So she's regurgitating what she hears from the toxic von der Leyen.
Exactly.
And obviously completely against the absolute majority of Italian public opinion. So you see a process of disintegration in the major capitals, in Brussels, and in NATO.
You know what's funny about Giorgia Meloni, and I want to point this out just for our listeners, is that she did really used to admire Mussolini. So as you used to admire fascism, look at how easy it is for a fascist to adapt to neoliberal policy.
Power. The answer to your question, Sarah, power.
Yeah.
When you get to power as the prime minister of the 3rd most important economy in Europe, it gets to your head. But very important, the foreign policy decisions are not made by Georgia. there is a combo of 2 or 3 behind her. These are the guys who make the decisions. And these guys are mega NATO, mega Atlanticists, and they connect directly with Mario Draghi, which is essentially the IMF, Goldman Sachs, European Central Bank, International Financial System guy who controls Italian finance, essentially. So these are the guys who make the decision in Italy. Georgia is just, you know, a nice hairdresser. That's it.
It's a shame.
A
You
shame.
mentioned the European elections. We did have some losses. We lost Claire Daly. We lost Mick in the Irish elections. But
I
also,
cannot understand, Sarah, how they could vote out Claire Daly.
I think it's the immigration thing. She's not hard
Yes,
on immigration.
I was
and
talking
they're
to an
having,
Irish connection here. He told me, yes, he said that immigration and
yes.
enormous Atlanticist lobby.
Yeah,
campaign
yeah. It's
against
the
her.
immigration thing. They just weren't hard enough on that. And
Yeah.
Ireland's really getting destroyed by the refugees from Britain, not from outside, from Britain. But you did mention the elections, and I know that they're inconsequential, but I still think that with these should be looked at as a thermometer for the sentiment going on in Europe. And we saw a big populist wave, especially in the East and including
Yes.
France. What do you make of this? I kind of wanted to point out that looking at it from a historical and political science standpoint, this does look a lot like the time leading up to and kind of inside of World War II, where we saw a huge populist wave that wound up turning fascist across Eastern Europe. Not saying that it will turn fascist, just saying these populist waves are very normal for this sort of situation. But I think that the Weimar Republic in this metaphor is more like the United States, or the United States and EU collectively. What do you think about this populist kind of wave taking over Europe?
In part is a reaction by masses of voters to the 24/7 Brussels campaign in every major capital and city across Europe. And it's not only Russophobia, Russia is the devil, Putin is the new Hitler, etc. Is variations of the Great Reset, is total control on exchange of information, control over social networks, control over how basically citizens across Europe live their lives, not to mention the degradation of the standard of living all across Europe. Like if you live in Paris, for instance, Parisians, for the first time in their lives, they actually see what inflation looks like in front of them. They had no clue about that. Paris is already the second most expensive city on the planet. So now people go out to buy their fromage or their tomatoes, and they see that it's 10% more expensive than last week or last month. They freak out completely. So welcome to the global majority, guys. Exactly. This is how it is in Nigeria. This is how it is in Turkey. This is how it is in many parts of Latin America. It's always been like that. But now it's inside the European Union. So obviously, those that are not brainwashed enough, they are making the direct connection, following living standards, Brussels dementia. They are making the connections, in the case of France, with the whole Macronist system, which is one of the most corrupt, perverted systems in the history of modern France. I would say that Mitterrand, Sarkozy, etc., compared to Macronism, they were apprentices, you know. And of course, all that with a sexual element that it's, for most traditional French families, this is absolutely disgusting. You know, the incestuous relationship in the Élysée Palace, Matignon, people close to Macron, ministers, you know, it's absolutely toxic. It's going to be very funny because next month, probably 80% of Paris will disappear because of the Olympic debacle. Everybody's going to leave because the city is going to be an urban disaster during the Olympics. In every aspect, you know. So, this collapse, which is cultural, anthropological, sociological, philosophical, moral, ethical, you name it. Everything is so blatant, and people discuss this at dinners in France, everywhere from Paris to the campaign in the countryside. They said, what about us? What can we do about it? Nothing. So the only thing that they could do for the moment was to vote against it. And obviously they voted for an extremely imperfect alternative, which is Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National, which is they are already being co-opted.
Yeah, and everybody calls them far right. I'm like, they're centrist.
Yeah,
like center right.
Exactly. Completely co-opted, just like the leadership of the so-called Front Populaire, Popular Front, which is Mélenchon, etc. Totally corrupted. Mélenchon, his dream of becoming prime minister is getting closer and closer. It's the only thing that he thinks about. He wants to be prime minister, whatever it takes. And now we are at the whatever it takes stage, where people might vote for the Front Populaire just to escape a premiership by Marine Le Pen's people. So this is Mélenchon's moment, already totally co-opted by the French establishment. They prefer him compared to Jordan Bardella, which is the leader of RN, right? So, but when you look at the configuration of the French political landscape at the moment, but toxic doesn't even begin to explain it. Compared to it, Italy is stable. Can you believe this?
You heard that, Italy?
Exactly, Italy is stable. So we have Georgia with her new her dresser and new Armanis. We have the guys dictating foreign policy behind. She's popular. She's relatively popular. She's the only European leader that is actually popular compared to the other ones. And Italy is not okay. They're always in bad straits economically, but not so bad compared to a few months ago. One of the reasons Mario Draghi, who's the guy behind, who's always doing his thing, he made it sure that look, let's give this girl a chance. Let's not do anything to upset the cart, at least for the moment. It works for us. We're still making a lot of money, so it's fine, right? If they had, for instance, a government by Matteo Salvini from the Liga, for instance, they would destroy this government in a matter of 1 or 2 months. But Meloni is acceptable for them, you see? So that's the difference. It depends on who's behind controlling the whole thing. In France, it's complicated because the orders come from the Rothschild family. Everybody in Paris knows this. Macron picks up the phone and he calls Alexandre de Rothschild. He's the heir, who's the guy who's running the business in Paris. And instead of calling David, which was Macron used to do before, now he calls Alexandre. And Alexandre gives him the parameters. In fact, this so-called strategy, I'm going to dissolve l'Assemblée Nationale, the parliament, and call for new elections without stepping down myself. This is the Rothschild plan. And it's working wonders because it completely polarized the country. It's total divide and rule. The country is breaking down. And whatever happens next, they will also control because they are betting on both sides, which is what these people do like masters.
So you recently attended SPIEF, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Scott Ritter didn't get to go. That's another story for another time, but he's safe and okay.
Everybody talked about it, Sarah, and it was predictable that something like this would happen.
Sure.
And obviously, they went to the Scott is probably the most visible of all these dissidents, so they went for him. They could have gone for. In fact, for Judge Knapp as well. But Judge Knapp was a completely different story because his sponsor in Novosibirsk was involved in a power struggle in Novosibirsk. It's a completely different story. They could have gone for Larry Johnson, but Larry is not as visible as Scott, you see? So it was predictable. And it was a warning to everybody else. Look, we can go for anyone we want, which is true.
Yeah. Well, what happened at the forum outside of Scott's big debacle? How was
No,
the
no. The
forum?
most important thing, but I wrote. I don't know if I wrote a long, detailed column last week.
We'll
Yeah,
link it in the description.
yeah.
Yeah.
After the, it was published 2 or 3 days after the end of the forum. The
Mm.
forum ended on Saturday. I think it was published on Monday. I basically listed the 3 top messages coming from St. Petersburg, and they are all interconnected, and they all deal with BRICS overall. First message is Putin's speech, which was something quite remarkable.
Yeah, it was
1
great.
hour, non-stop, on top of every dossier, numbers, figures. Mind people in the room were like, wow, everybody. Well, number one, the message inbuilt in the speech is they threw everything plus any kitchen sink in the market against us, and it didn't stick. We turned it around, and now we are the 4th largest economy in the world by PPP. And if you count the Russian black economy, gray economy, informal economy, cash economy, it's almost third. And it's going to be third soon, because this is almost 50% on top of the numbers of the Russian economy. And this is something that you notice here in Moscow. I'll give you a very simple example. You see a lot of Georgians and Kyrgyz and Uzbeks here in Moscow. They are on the cash economy completely. And it's a lot of business. Multiply this to all those oblasts. In Siberia, Siberia is cash, essentially. And you have an idea of the force, the strength of the Russian gray economy. So this was message number one. Expelling us from SWIFT, tsunami of sanctions. You cannot sell oil and gas. And much of the merit is Madame Elvira Nabiulina at the Russian Central Bank.
Yeah.
As well as many of us and many critics as well say, no, she's the archetypical central banker, but she's enormously competent. So merit to her, and merit to the Russian Ministry of Finance as well. Right. Message number 2 was de-dollarization, essentially. There was that famous meeting, Putin and Dilma, president of the NDB, the BRICS Bank. They discussed a new system called the unit, which, by the way, we did the first story in the world, in fact, about it a month ago or so. The conceptualizers of the unit are 2 Russians and 1 Chinese. It has been already academically approved. Yesterday, they told me that the Russian Ministry of Finance said, okay, we're going to back you up. And Putin and Dilma discussed that in their meeting. And the next day, there was a meeting that was as important as Putin Dilma. It was Glaziev and Dilma in a private room at the forum. Nobody knew about this thing. Glaziev was explaining the concept of the unit as a new unit of cross-border payments to Dilma. And at the end, both were beaming. Dilma was, she was very warm. She loved the meeting. She said, no, I understand. It's fantastic, etc. We're going to set up a seminar about it at the NDB in Shanghai in September. Glaziev said, oh, the meeting was excellent, etc. There's going to be follow-ups, etc. So this was the second message. And the third message was BRICS as a whole, because all the important sessions at the forum, they were directly or indirectly linked to BRICS. So if you were discussing the North-South transportation corridor, if you were discussing the relationship between Eurasia Economic Union and ASEAN, the 10 from the Southeast Asia, there was always a BRICS angle. Plus all the sessions that were specific on BRICS. There was one session, Sarah, that I have to leave it on the record for you and our audience. We had on the same table Russian ministers, we had Sergei Glaziev, we had Karin Neissel, former foreign minister of Austria, and the Taliban minister of labor on the same table discussing Eurasia integration. I almost fell from my chair when I saw this. I put a picture on my Twitter X so people follow. This really happened.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely extraordinary. And then the Taliban delegation were three guys, top level, ministerial level. There was a Russian guy taking them all over and working the crowd with the three, introducing the three Talibans to everybody that mattered. Absolutely fascinating to watch something like this. And of course, when we consider that during his introduction, in fact, his speech, which was very, very, very sound, it was in Pashto with instant translation. The Russians, as you know, they translate everything, and they have the best translators everywhere. So they were translating straight from Pashto, and basically was saying, look, we want to be part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We want to integrate with all of you. We want you to invest in Afghanistan. Absolutely outstanding. Can you imagine something like this? Can you imagine 1 year ago thinking that something like this would happen?
Mm-mm.
So fast? No, nobody could, right? So this is the great thing about the forum. You had these meetings from everywhere and discussing all these issues, connectivity corridors, de-dollarization practices, etc., with all the actors from all. For instance, the session with Eurasia Economic Union and ASEAN, there were 4 ASEAN countries represented. That's practically half of Southeast Asia was there. And look, we're going to have a free trade agreements with Eurasia Economic Union, etc. There was a session about, my personal favorite was a session about the Northern Silk Road, where the motto, I didn't even have time to write about that, but my headline is going to be, we need icebreakers. which is what one of the ministers were saying. We need icebreakers. And the best thing is that they are building 4 extra nuclear icebreakers with a technology that nobody in the world has except Rosatom. So, when you put this all together, it's absolutely mind-boggling, the quality and quantity of information and the variety of the information, and the fact that you see all these things progressing in parallel towards multipolarity, or the new expression which I would like to popularize, the multinodal world, a series of nodes. It's much better than poles, in fact. And these nodes interconnect. So this is the formation of the multinodal world. And Putin, the last sentence in his speech, harmonic multipolar world, which is a very Chinese concept. So Putin incorporated this Chinese idea of harmony, equilibrium. It's a very Taoist idea. In fact, this proves that he's been talking to Xi all the time. And this, this Taoist approach, now you can see some things that Putin and Lavrov are saying. And that's it. This is the famous people-to-people's exchanges. You start exchanging ways of seeing the world, different ways of seeing the world, and incorporate. It's absolutely fascinating. What I just gave is just a mini resume of how exciting the whole thing was.
Well, we're not going to switch to multinodal world because we're already branded, and we'll have to rebrand.
We're already branded.
Everybody, forget about the word multinodal.
But you can use it, Sarah. You can use it on and off. Yeah.
So I always end with the BRICS question, and I think we might have manifested it. It has just been announced while we were talking that Malaysia is beginning the process officially. So,
of course, Malaysia was there, by the way, at the forum, Sarah. One of the best sessions, which was Eurasia Economic Union ASEAN. There was a first-class Malaysian scholar on the table, and on the sidelines, she's saying, "Yeah, of course we're going to go into BRICS. Thailand is going. It's our neighbor. We have to go as well."
Well, I mean, and then we have Putin. I feel like it's going to be a very Asia-heavy year for BRICS. We have Putin visiting the DPRK multiple times and Vietnam
Yes.
again. I'm pretty confident in saying Vietnam will place a bid or get a bid into BRICS. What do you think about that? Now, this is a wild card. Is DPRK allowed to join? I guess they would be. Is there anything restricting the DPRK from joining BRICS?
No. Legally, no. I'm sure they are discussing the possibility. There's no question, because there's no Northeast Asia on BRICS. Very important. There's going to be a lot of Southeast Asia. Maybe we can have Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam entering at the same time, or in 2 stages between end of this year, next year. But there's nobody from Northeast Asia. And obviously, the relationship Russia, China, and DPRK now is very, very close,
Yeah.
much to the merit of Putin. Putin made the reapproximation between Kim Jong-un and Xi. They had serious problems. Guess who was the mediator? Putin in person. And obviously, Kim Jong-un loved the whole thing. Yes, they are selling weapons to Russia. In fact, they're practically sending weapons to Russia. You don't need to pay. You pay later, no problem. So there's nothing that would prevent DPRK on BRICS. But the Russians want to go slowly with the whole thing. Lavrov he told us in February. He told a small group of us, no expansion this year. First, we need to accommodate the 5. When everybody is, relaxed in their new position, their new role, then we're going to start thinking about expansion, because at the time it was 30 something. Now it's over 40.
Yeah.
And maybe in a few months it's going to be over 50. Everybody wants to get into BRICS. So in St. Petersburg itself, on the crucial day was the Thursday, June 8th, we learned that 59 countries had already applied officially for BRICS, SCO, and Eurasia Economic Union. Now it's already 60 something, and soon it's going to be 70. When we get to October, the summit in Kazan is going to be 70 something. So everybody knows which way the wind is blowing. There's no question.
Just ask a question from the audience. I kind of tied to the BRICS. So we talked last time I had you on. We did Serbia possibly moving into BRICS because of Xi's visit. Now we have this interesting trifecta that has sort of developed out of default. We have an Orban, Vucic, and Fico in Slovakia.
Yes.
All kind of pushing back on the West. But with Fico and Orban, they're both in NATO. How does this sort of triumvirate work? Do you think that they'll move even further away from NATO and towards Russia?
We don't. It's a good question, Sarah, because we don't know. In fact, nobody knows. Orban is a very, very clever articulator. He can see that NATO is collapsing from the inside. He talks to Fico and he talks to Vucic. Obviously, they are all talking. So obviously they are already thinking the next moves. Okay, what if NATO collapses? What's going to happen? And of course, Hungary and Serbia have excellent relations with China linked to Belt and Road. Slovakia is much more complicated because in theory, they are part of these 3 new bases that the Americans are going to set up in Eastern Europe to funnel weapons to Ukraine. We still don't know the terms. We still don't know if in the end Slovakia is going to say yes. We still don't know how much they're being pressured. Obviously, they're being pressured to death. But for the moment, it's the whole thing is undefined. But these 3 are very important actors in terms of at least more or less organizing an alternative to the NATO that the Americans want. The NATO that the Americans want essentially is Washington, obviously, London, Warsaw, Baltic Chihuahuas, Kiev. Kiev is going to be total collapse, already is. So they're going to be left with Poland, the rabbit Poles, and the Baltic Chihuahuas. This is not enough for NATO that means anything. It's enough rhetorically if you are building a new iron wall, which they are. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, there is already a new iron wall, and it's going to be finished soon, and enters Romania as well, including the Romanian coastline in the Black Sea. But this is not enough. They still need the Scandinavians, they need Finland, and obviously there's a lot of counter pressure inside Finland. No, are we going to serve the Americans again? We're going to be the first ones to be bombed if anything happens, which is completely absurd. The Swedes is different because the Swedes, they still bear a grudge against Russia since the 17th century. And these people never forget. And Sweden has one of the most toxic establishments and ruling classes on the planet.
Yeah, Sweden's a mess.
These people are beyond nasty. Nothing is beyond them. So that's complicated. So obviously, Orban, Vucic, and Fico are looking at, okay, we don't want this NATO. We don't want to be part of this new NATO or this NATO 2.0. What could we do? But we need to find allies. Considering what would happen in Italy in the next 1, 2, 3 years, if they have a different government, they could be an ally. Certainly. No question about that. And Austria. Don't forget Austria as well. Very important. In fact, Austria leans towards Hungary.
Yeah.
The old Austro-Hungarian Empire, in fact, never died. Still there, right? And of course, and this is something that my German dissident friends, they love to say it. It's a little bit of wishful thinking, but it's a little bit of reading history, how history is always wobbling. There's going to be a reassurance treaty, Bismarck style, between Russia and Germany someday. And this someday could be before the end of this decade. Okay, this is the wishful thinking part. I would say if that happens, it would be around 2040, maybe. We're still too far away, but it's quite possible because of pressure by German businesses, by the Hanseatic League up there, by industrialists in Hamburg, by industrialists in Bavaria. They say, man, we're being destroyed by the Americans. They destroyed Germany as a global trading powerhouse. We need to get at least something back. And if we don't get cheap energy, we'll never get it back. So these people already, they did the math already. They probably how to implement it. You see, but the current tactical victory of the Americans, deindustrialize Germany and vassalize Germany ad infinitum, is momentary. It's not. We don't know how long this is going to last. So I'm trying to bring the auspicious possibility to all of you. It's in the cards, but it's a long-term process.
Yeah, right? And I want to bounce one thing off you before we go. Dugan said, I've always said we're in World War III. It's just a different type of war. Dugan said that World War III started when the counteroffensive officially failed. The Ukrainian counteroffensive officially failed. But I don't think that now that I'm looking back in hindsight, I don't think that it's really officially begun, but I think that it is inevitable. What are your thoughts?
No, it's not inevitable, but then we would need a deep down Freud Lacanian examination on the psyche of the real plutocracy, that rarefied plutocracy that really runs the show. In fact, these are the guys who give orders to emissaries like Sullivan, Blinken, low level types. These people don't make policy, they receive orders. It's different. And the way Putin and the Security Council are interpreting what's going to happen next is that an order was already given by this rarefied plutocracy for a hot war in Europe against Russia. The Americans are going to be outside of the whole thing once again. And when there's some sort of definition, they will pounce and collect the debris. This, what I'm telling you is more or less what Putin, Medvedev, Narishkin, Bortnikov are interpreting the situation. This, we discussed this a lot here, and very good very good diplomats and Russian geopolitical analysts. We all of us would more or less agree that this is the way this is being read. How to counteract it? Then it's the different approaches: the legalistic approach by Putin, and the decapitation strike approach by Medvedev, and everything in between. You see, so there is not apparently there's not a consensus on the top on how we're going to prevent this hot war from happening. They see the escalation, they see the green lights, they see the red lights being trespassed all the time. But in fact, nobody here knows how they're going to react, overall, if, for instance, there is a false flag, which is quite possible.
Yeah.
Or if there is there is a ultra hardcore provocation during this summer of living dangerously. And that's what makes it even more dangerous, Sarah, because it's total uncertainty. But at the same time, you detect a feeling of a certain feeling of, they bien d'un sapot. In French, it's a wonderful expression. Bien d'un sapot means you're okay with your skin. You're at ease with yourself. That's the impression that you feel from the people in power here in Moscow. They are prepared. They don't expect any good surprises, only bad surprises.
Yeah.
But whatever happens, they seem to be prepared.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust Turkey?
Oh, this would be the subject of a special conversation. I just came before talking to you. I was at a conference at the Ministry of Education with some ultra top geopolitical analysts, experts in international relations, Russians. There was a guy from Georgia and a guy from Uzbekistan as well. And guess what we were talking about? Turkey. We were talking about the organization of Turkic states. What are they up to? What kind of geoeconomic, geopolitical, cultural scam project it is. Fascinating debate at the highest level, a kind of stuff that you will never see in the West, And the Russians are extremely suspicious of Turkish motives, extremely suspicious. From my point of view as a foreigner, maybe too much. But I understand why. But for instance, I was trying to give them an outsider point of view of, look, they're trying to compensate for the fact that they are not very influential across Central Asia with something like this organization of Turkic states. They know that the big players in Central Asia are Russia and China. There's not much they can do to change that, in terms of investment, in terms of what they can offer Central Asian states. They're not even member of the SCO. And the fact that they now apparently want to enter BRICS and also enter the SCO proves that they are reading the situation in a different manner, saying, look, we're going to be completely excluded from the real ball game, and Russia, China, India, Pakistan, they are all in, and we're out. But this history is a bitch, isn't it?
Really is.
Don't forget that Russian Empire and Ottoman Empire. So this never left, This never left.
And last question from the audience: can Turkey simultaneously be in BRICS and NATO, or will it have to choose?
That's an excellent question. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah, that's what I've been getting.
Really, nobody knows. The Americans, of course, will say, well, they're going to freak out completely. But from a legal point of view, why not? They can belong to any club they want. Right? So And that's, but the key thing, Sarah, is nobody really knows what Erdogan is up to with this move. Even the best Kemalist academics in Istanbul, they are slightly puzzled. They said, okay, we suspected this could happen, but like this, so sudden and so affirmative, like you have the foreign minister actually saying, oh, see, entering BRICS is a much better idea than being part of the European Union, which they will never be. Everybody
No, they'll
knows.
never get in.
Never. Especially because of the French. Especially because number one against was not the Germans, the French. So and Erdogan it's a fascinating character in many aspects because and this was confirmed by my friends in Istanbul. He doesn't read shit. He doesn't read. He's not a reader. There's not a single book in that glitzy bling bling palace in Ankara. He reads the Quran and he misinterprets the Quran. He doesn't know how to read the Quran properly. And he thinks he knows everything. So you go to a council of ministers, only Erdogan speaks. And then he says, you're going to do this, and everybody's like, okay. So nobody really knows what goes inside his head. What is quite plausible is that he actually read the chessboard this time and said, look, if I don't do anything now, I'm going to be excluded from everything. And I'm going to be left as the eastern flank of NATO. What for? Huh?
Well,
very complicated. This is a fascinating topic.
Yeah, we've been trying to. Well, Turkey's always our kind of our enigma. So
yes,
I definitely wanted to ask about it, but we've monopolized enough of your time, I think. And you came in like a tornado in the beginning. But yeah. So what do you think? And then one more. How about Iran's situation? How is Iran doing? As of right now, someone just asked in the comments, and I kind of wanted to ask your thoughts. And I haven't talked to you since.
I haven't followed Iran these past few days, so I have to be very frank with all of you. I'm waiting until the election is going to be on June 28th, right? So a few days before, I'm going to reconcentrate my attention on Iran. I would say that the best solution for Iran at the moment would be Saeed Jalili as president. I actually wrote that in one of my columns for the Cradle. And I debated with Sharmin at the Cradle. We both agreed that this is the best solution because it would be a continuation of Raisi and Abdullahian as foreign minister. The current interim foreign minister, this guy's very, very good. Ali Bagheri Ghani. He's excellent. So if you have a team of Saeed Jalili, former nuclear negotiator, and Ali Bagheri Ghani, excellent. He knows West Asia very well. He knows Eurasia very well. Lavrov respects him a lot. This would be very, very good for continuity.
Perfect.
And we expect that this is because the other candidates are not exactly brilliant. Well, and I'm being very diplomatic. No. They are bureaucrats, and bureaucrats without a very good track record, contrary to Jalili and Bagheri Ghani. So let's see. Elections in Iran are very tricky business.
Well, thank you, Pepe. And like he mentioned, please check out his articles on the Cradle. And the Cradle has just started hosting spaces on Twitter. So make sure you do go and follow the Cradle's Twitter page and follow Pepe and buy Pepe's book, Eurasia versus NATO Stan.
Yes, buy the book. You're going to love the book. And
it's really good.
I hate to do promo, Sarah, but
I'll do it. Buy NATO.
I hate doing promo because I don't know how to do promo. To start with.
I think I actually have it. There we go. Here. Buy this book, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you.
There you go. Buy that book, everybody. Support Pepe.
No,
just
because
like Albert said, just buy the effing book.
No, the book explains why we are here now, essentially, because it's a collection of essays since you remember the pre-SMO situation where Russia sent those 2 letters to the Americas and to Brussels, talking about indivisibility of security. This means, okay, let's all sit down the same table and study a new security system, good for you, good for Western Europe, for Eastern Europe, post-Soviet space, etc. And obviously nothing happened. What happened afterwards was the SMO. So this book follows everything that happened since end of 2021. And there are some breaks in the middle, which is basically a mix of travel writing and geopolitics. For instance, I use Sicily to talk about NATO. I use going to Center Anatolia to talk about Rumi. I use Bukhara to talk about Sufism and to integration of Central Asia. So you have these pit stops in the middle. And of course, and the rest is everything that you know: BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, multipolar world, connectivity corridors, transportation corridors, all, you know. So it could be very helpful for you to have a multifaceted approach to what we're living now. And of course, there is the final essay is about Donbass, written in Donbass. So you see how was the situation in Donbass early this year, for instance. Okay, that's the promo.
You did. You wound up doing a promo anyway. So thank you very much, Pepe. Please stay after the show because the producer has some questions for you. Guys, sometime this week.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks a lot. Thank you, all of you.
We'll have Garland Nixon on sometime this week, guys, and Dan Kowalik next week. So stay tuned. Go to ddgeopolitics.com, buy some merchandise, support us, help me move to wherever I'm moving to. And yeah, I think that's it. We have Instagram.
Sarah, are you in NATO stan? Are you in NATO stan now?
I am right now, but not for long. Not for long.
Where? Where are you?
I'm in USA right now.
No, you're not in NATO stan, Europe.
No, I'm in the original NATO stand. I'm in the
I'm
on the mothership. I'm in the belly of the beast. Thanks, everyone, and have a good week. Pepe, stay after for detention.
Thank